Hello and welcome to Hot Issues. Parliament took an extraordinary decision. It maintained December 7th as the date for the elections and thereby rejected the proposal for November 7th as the date for the election. Why did Parliament do so? What were the ingredients that were considered by Parliament? And is this the end of the matter? These are the issues that we are discussing on Hot Issues today. And just to be reminded that this program is sponsored by the nation's builder, Gassem Cement. Welcome to Hot Issues. We are very, very, very privileged to have with us Nana Ato Dadzie, who is a lawyer, who has been Chief of Staff in Ghana, and is also known as an international consultant on transitions. Nana, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have you been following the developments? First of all, what went into deciding that we could shift the date from December 7th to November 7th? What were the essential ingredients?
Well, Kwesi, thank you very much, and thank you to viewers. This constitutional amendment bill that was before Parliament is really part of a process. It didn't start from January this year, as some people are saying. It is part of the process of developing a framework for handing over power or transferring power from one government to another, peacefully and democratically. And, our history as a country from 1966, transition has always been in the prisons or the police station, where one government comes and kicks out the other government and throws the members of the outgoing government to police stations and whatnot. Now, in 2000, a historic event occurred where there was a democratically elected government handed over power to another democratically elected government. And that was a historic event, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. Because it simply does not happen. Now, so many things went into creating this kind of situation. And the major factor was that here we had a constitution, a democratic constitution for once, that had a limit to the tenure for the president. That's 2 terms. So at the end of 2000, there must be an election. Somebody must come in, or you continue. Now, the problem there was that how do you hand over? It had never occurred. It was unique. I was chief of staff at the time. We were all confused. The incoming government really were not prepared for governance. The outgoing, we didn't know what to do, and there was a lot of confusion, and it led to a lot of acrimony between the two sides. We thought we'd have learnt our lessons after that, but in 2008, it occurred again, where the MPP had to hand over again, this time back to NDC. Again there was this crisis. Now, in between, we realized that because of the way the MPP were treated the NDC in 2000, and the way NDC treated MPP in 2008, the country was polarized. Up to today, the country is polarized. Every issue, whether economic, social, whatever it is, discussed, is completely polarized. Sometime 2006, I believe, or so, the Ghana political party platform, made up of largely the key parties, the major parties in Ghana, came together and said, we can't continue this way. So they had the services from Professor Kwame Ahoy, and he did a paper for them. And he centered on this point, that there's a need for a framework to be created for transfer, regular and smooth transfer of power. So that is essentially what it is. Now, what is happening today, or what was rejected, it's only part of that process, you understand? Because it relates to the transition, the time, the framework for the transition. In 2001, election was in 7 December. There was a runoff. So 21 days, the runoff had to end up in 28th. Now, within our constitution, handing over is constitutionally fixed for 7th January. So if you go into second round 28th, then you can understand what you can barely have 4 days or so for handing over. It's happened the same thing again in 2008. You see, so immediately you have that, then you have a crisis, the crisis of transition, handing over. In most advanced countries, they have a longer period. America, they go to election in November 7th or thereabout, first week, Tuesday, and then the handover is somewhere in February. It enables transition to take place. You understand? It's not easy. Handing over, creating a government, establishing a government takes about 6 months. How do you do it in 3 days, 4 days? And it is necessary to reduce the polarization. The time constraint was a factor. So this law, in fact, was to create, sufficient breadth for transition to take place. Not necessarily one government to another government, but even the same government, even if it's succeeding itself, if it wins, like President Ma, if he wins, he still will have to form a new government. And the same challenges are there. So for me, what this law that was rejected was but a bit of what, has already been passed in the year 2012 on the Presidential Transition Act, which is an act of all the parties.
Now, sir, even coup regimes take over. So what was the big deal?
Well, the problem of transition has everything to do with stability of a country. If you watch it, all over Africa, the challenges of stability has been as a result of weak transition. Take our next door neighbor, Ivory Coast. What was it? When President Gbagbo says, I'm not handing over, you understand? That is a problem we're looking at. Some people do not understand or see the transition as an issue. Go to Nigeria, go to Ivory Coast, the Togo. There were a whole lot of problems. The election is one thing, but the problem with what happens after, Kenya, Egypt, all the countries of Africa, it's a real problem. But let's contrast that with what happened only 2 weeks back or so in the UK. Cameron walked off the scene. The next day, there was another person in as prime minister. That's cool, and no problem. Why?
But shouldn't that be the issue that more or less shows that you can do a transition in 1 day? Cameron walked off, another person took over immediately.
Yeah,
there was no lull.
Yeah, but that's where our elders say that when you see a duck on the water, it's cool, smooth, but beneath it, there's a lot of paddling, to stay afloat. And that's exactly what it is. In the UK situation, the transition operates within the civil service. So a lot of work goes on. The incoming chief of staff and the outgoing, they have a lot of discussions private off the cameras. So much more work goes on. In the US, transition starts 6 months before election. 6 months before election, all appointees, ministers and whatnot, will have to start preparing the handing over notes, give it to, send it to a certain office. So many more things go. So what do you see? Most of us, what we see by way of transition is a formal 1 day, 7th, January, handing over of power. No, there's a lot more that ought to be done, a lot more that ought to be done.
Yeah, but the transition from David Cameron to Theresa May could not have lasted more than a month.
No, I'm saying that because they've gone through it for over 100 years. centuries of doing this kind of transition. You understand? Indeed, from our analysis, the transition in the top transition, what you see as transition in UK, takes barely 3 hours. You know, the outgoing Prime Minister goes to the Queen, bids his farewell, and as he's moving out, the incoming PM also, you know, goes to take the letters of appointment. You get me? But I'm saying that is all that you see on the surface. But a lot of work will have to go on. Who does that job? You know, the parties would have agreed to what must be done. And that is a problem we have here. We had this problem because until 2001, we didn't first of all have the culture of handing over to anybody. You see, and then two, when we were going out, the NDC at the time was going out, you know, they just didn't know what to do. You know, there was no precedent. So from 2001, a lot of work has been done, and I'm saying that it was not satisfactory, both to MPP and NDC. That is why there was it's been a lot of meetings with the support of IEA and other organizations in formulating a document that we normally call the Presidential Transition Act, Act 845. You see, now it sets up a presidential estates unit, for instance, that runs the 4 years of the tenure. And what they do is during this period, they collate a lot of things, you know, data and whatnot. And they will focus as a point of transition. If they are working well, all that you need to see as a citizen will be just the formal transfer of power by, you know, what do you call it, a Bible or something to the new incoming president. You see, but I'm saying that the critical matter was that because our handing over period is cast in iron or gold or whatever it is, in stone, you know, by the Constitution, we have a problem. So we have to work backwards. We have to work backwards. You can't change that one for now because it involves, it goes going to have a, what do you call it, a whole referendum to change that date. You see, it's an entrenched clause. However, the tenure of the of Parliament must end not later than 30 days before the 4-year term. You see, that clause is not entrenched. You see, so it was decided that why don't we amend this parliamentary, you know, legislation, that bit, to fall in line with the presidential, you know, arrangement, because the presidential one says, look, before 3-4 months before the end of the tenure of the president, you can have an election. So technically, we can even have an election in October this year, you see. But that for Parliament limits it to 30 days. And you know how we organize ourselves. So we think, why have 2 elections? So amend the parliamentary one to fall back into, say, the first Monday in the election year. Yes.
But sir, in 2012, when the New Patriotic Party lost elections, it knew that it was going to contest elections again in 2016.
Yes, sir.
And at least it was hoping to win. Why should it need 1 extra month to prepare when it has had 4 years to prepare to assume office? And also, the NDC knew that it could lose elections in 2012. Why do they need more time?
No,
They've had 4 years.
Yes.
Why do they need more time?
Yeah, but that's exactly the point of my initial objection. And that is where I fault Parliament. I think that Parliament lost its focus in this debate. You see, your question is asking about election. It's talking about election. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that we should move, lift our eyes off election into the transition. You see, because one, if you go into the issue of election, then it starts from the partisan level. You know, you were talking about somebody needing one more month, you know, longer, or somebody needing one more month, you know, for campaign or something. I mean,
No,
it doesn't
not for campaign.
Okay, but it doesn't even
for handing over.
For handing over. Yes, I'm saying that for me that is not an issue that can be determined at all. But the focus of the law was intended to create greater space for transition. That's why I'm saying that if you keep your eye on the election, you will miss the boat. You see, because you have to prioritize.
So concretely,
yes,
greater space for transition. What does it mean, concretely?
Yes, greater space for transition. What it means is that there will be a longer period, you know, in the event of a runoff. You see,
but I'm saying,
yes,
that from 2012, all of us as Ghanaians knew that 2016, President Mahama will be handing over to himself or be handing over to Green Street or somebody else.
Yes.
That's a fact that we have known all the time.
Yes.
Why do you need an extra month to prepare to hand over when we have known that for 4 years? That's the issue I'm raising.
No, okay, if I understand you, what it means, you are asking, why didn't we start this amendment earlier?
No, not the amendment.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, this business of transition.
Yes.
Why is it that the extension from November, you know, to December, that 1 month period, is so crucial to organize a good transition when we can actually put in place processes of transition which start 4 years earlier? That's the point I'm making.
Exactly. That's why I'm telling you that, first of all, what we were talking about, the time constraints, is part of what you're talking about, the 4-year thing. You see, it is part of the major matter of transition. Now, the whole question of transition is new to us. We are developing it. I'm saying that it's 2012 when the law was eventually passed. Everybody was pussyfooting. It's 2012 before the law was passed. And within the last 4 years, you know, structures have been put in place, I understand, you know, to be able to deal with this, you know. Now, one of the areas of challenge that was seen, as I said, is the time element, you know. Admittedly, they could have started earlier, you know, that this amendment could have started earlier. And that's a matter for EC to respond to. But you can also understand that EC, the way I see it, they've been confronted with so many challenges right from 2012. You know, we are all in this country. We spent 10 months in court contesting issues. After that, you know, EC had literally gone half lame, as it were. You know, and they have been attacked left and right. I mean, I can understand the time that's been frittered away as a result of so many of our own internal political challenges. You know.
Now, sir.
Yes.
Any government,
yeah,
worth its title, ought to have an inventory of state assets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any opposition worth its title and so on ought to know the state of the economy. Budget is read in Parliament. Ministers can be summoned to give figures and so on.
Yeah.
What is the difficulty about transition when all the facts can be known if government is running properly and if the opposition is up to its task?
The problem is with structure. The problem is with institution. We, as I said, first of all, we didn't have that history, you know. So it's only from 2001 experience and 2008 experience that we sat down and said, the party said, no, we can't continue this way. And then the law came into place. The law of 2012 is intended to create a framework, an institution that will manage our transition. Now, the points that you're making are very legitimate. In this country, we do not have a national assets register. That's something like that. I can bet you that you go into many of the government establishments, they cannot give you a list of the government assets. People are using government assets. Some people are living in government bungalows. They've appropriated, or their grandfathers, lived in them, and they have stayed in, and nobody ever remembers anything. You see, that is a problem. Now, the purpose of the administrative center or the institution to deal with the transition is to ensure that we have structures which will carry these things through, manage, monitor, supervise, and audit these projects. I'll tell you, in the US, if you're a president or so, you leave office and you go away, you are to leave, nobody disturbs you. You carry anything, everything you want to put in your Air Force 2, and you are flown away, even as the Air Force 1 carries the new man in. You understand? But 3 months later, you get a little note that to say that an artifact, number 1346, that used to hang in this room, cannot be found. Can you please account for it? You understand? We don't have that. We don't have that. I mean, if the problem has been, the fact that we don't have assets, National Register of Assets. We don't have an investigation or audit system. A minister stays in a bungalow. When he is fired, he leaves. We've had situations where people have left bungalows with assets. You understand? I mean, these are all things. So it is not idle talk at all. I think that this is a very critical area of our governance that we should work together to establish, because therein lies the issue of stability of the country.
I asked the innocent question. How does this arrangement of constitutional amendments shifting the date of the election cure the problem of lack of a national assets register?
Yes. Well, the change in date, as I said, is to create greater space for the transition. That's what is important. Now, you may not see immediately what the change in date will do in this respect. But like I'm saying, that change in date enables a lot more work to be done. In the year 2000, we had 4 days of transition, 4 days. In 2008, it was less than 3 days for transition.
I'm coming. And just helping you.
Yes.
A lot more work. What work?
Yes. Now, you see, the work of transition, there will be a lot more, one, in terms of just the handing over, you see, the handing over processes. People will have to, the incoming people will have to ask questions, and they will need answers. In Nigeria, when I went there, the transition was prolonged because some of the responses came in about the last day, with a 2,000-page document handed over the incoming, minister for the next day. How does he digest it? People want to analyze it. It creates a lot of suspicion. You get me? So the incoming will be raising issues. The outgoing will think that they are under attack, personal attack. I'm saying that it is the polarization as a result of the short period of transition.
Why is the polarization the result of the short period? The polarization is there even today. It's been there all the time.
Yeah, but I'm saying...
In the Nkrumah time, we threw bombs at each other. It's been there.
Yeah, no,
so,
but that's...
So why is the polarization the result of the short period?
Yeah, but that is a polarization of a sort. That was a political polarization, that was as a result, that's the bomb throwing, as a result of so many other political factors. But we are talking about polarization arising out of the transition. The sheer acrimony, you can't believe it. In 2000, I can assure you, there are some NDC ministers who were compelled in 2000 to go to court pursuing cars who they thought had been unlawfully taken away from them. Those actions are still in court. In 2008, quite a number of MPP ministers and whatnot protested about the way they were treated, the way they were handled. And there was very little time to respond to that.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that if you extend or shorten the date of the election, it doesn't cure this problem.
No.
If an incoming party feels that the people it's replacing are thieves and that they have stolen government property and so on, whether you extend the date, you are shortening it or whatever, that bad blood is going to be there.
Yes, but I'm saying
it has nothing to do with time limit.
No. It has everything.
It has everything to do with statesmanship. It has everything to do with the elimination of suspicion, not time.
Yes, well, Chrissy, you've moved the bar one step higher. I thought we'll come to that later on. But the reality is that after elections, one party feels victorious. There's a euphoria of victory. Then the defeated one, tail in between his legs. And it's not the best time to have this kind of, nationalism appeal and whatnot. That's why we say things must be done systematically. 2 months that we are actually seeking for transition, more than a month of it will be taken away by the repeat election. You understand? If there's a second round. So really, it's not like you have 2 months for handing over. It's to avoid, essentially, to avoid that situation where you have a short transition as a result of what is very obvious. I mean, we've had at least 2 times we've had to go for a repeat election. Looking at figures even of today, it's possible. I mean, you can't rule it out. You get me? What happens? We don't have to wait until we get there before we have answers. So you give yourself a little more room to run this thing. But to the point that you raised, you were talking about patriotism, appeal to statesmanship and whatnot. That is the point at which, I feel sad about yesterday's parliamentary decision. We all do know, we all do accept that there's a need to shift the date. Indeed, the minority were very loud with it, that in principle, they have no problem, absolutely no problem. At a point, I heard some of them saying that they started the move to even get the date extended. As at the day before, the night evening before, my understanding of it was a consensus to let the date, the bill pass. So what happened between the evening and then the morning? Then the usual polarization sets in. They go into Parliament and they kick that thing overboard. Why did the parties in Parliament agree in principle? Because they thought this was worthy for the state. The state it was necessary. So at what point would they allow partisanship to stray in, to come in, so that we throw it overboard? That's what I feel so sad. Because they all, even as at present, strongly defend the position that change of date was very important, was necessary. They moved into another factor that, but we are not too sure that if we, we change the date, EC can make it. Well, EC says, yes, we can do it. Either date. So why? We have to prioritize. And I think that, like I said, they look more at the election. The focus was more on the election than on the transition, which I believe is so critical.
But the question of the preparedness of the Electoral Commission, isn't it a legitimate concern?
It is. I'll be the first to admit that it is quite a worrying concern. I mean, is the EC ready or not? They claim they are ready. But Kwesi, that's why we have Parliament. That's why we have the subcommittees. They've got to call the ECs, sit them down, rigorously run them through until they confess that they cannot do it. Then we know where we are.
But the vote in Parliament
Yes.
suggests that a very, very strong percentage of members did not believe that the EC was ready.
Well,
About 95, 97 members of Parliament voted against the change. That is significant.
Yes, but if you look at the 125 or so against 95, they voted on party lines, straight line. That's where the problem is. You understand? If the point you're making, rationally had shown NDC members voting against it, or that MPP members voted for, then you can come to a conclusion that, well, they analyzed and came to a conclusion that EC was not ready. You got me? But I'm saying but they voted on strict, party lines.
So, but there's still no evidence that they voted on party lines.
No, those are the numbers who are there.
Yes, but it's still not conclusive proof that they voted on party lines.
Oh, well, I mean, so...
Of the 95 that voted against,
yes,
10 could have been NDC people. The 125 that voted for, another 10 could have been MPP people.
Oh, well, I think that we are old enough to understand what the ins and outs of the Parliament. I mean, the MPP came strongly out and said that they were balking against the consensus that had been arrived at. They didn't hide it. They said they, as an organization, as a party, were not satisfied, so they would not abide by the consensus. You see, I always try to avoid coming to this level. I'm saying that's the area where I have a problem. When immediately you introduce the MPP, NDC factor, then the people stop thinking, with all due respect, or even rationalize it. Who is talking, who is speaking. Maybe he's speaking for NDC, maybe he's speaking for MPP. No, I think that that's why I'm saying that we should raise the argument higher, one step higher, and look at what is the consequences of refusing to expand the date for transition for all of us, whether NDC or MPP.
So what are the consequences?
Well, no, you come to that. You see, one, what's going to happen would be that we will have a shorter period for transition. Obviously, if there's a runoff, we're going to have the same challenges which we had in 2000 and which we had in 2008. And these are the challenges which the parties themselves, under the Ghana political party platform, said no, they will not go back to it. They never want to go back to it. You understand? So why do we go back to it? What's going to happen is that for the next 4 years, we will perpetuate this, one party against the other, and probably deepen the polarization that currently exists. Nobody, I don't know, not even the party, apparatchiks are happy with this situation where, it's like there's this division, this polarization. At least, I mean, it's something Anadu says must be right, or something that President Mahama says must be right. But when you have a situation where it doesn't matter, what the person is saying, it's either wrong or it's right, depending upon where you stand. It's not right. Mm-hmm. Let me say that once they came themselves, the parties themselves came to a conclusion that it was right, proper, and necessary to change the date. Indeed, they went before the IPAC met. Mm-hmm. IPAC, this is an inter-party, consultation group. They themselves, until the last meeting, they had agreed they were going to change the date. They had the draft. The draft was discussed. There was a public hearing. Everybody had agreed. The other stakeholders, you understand? So, Kwesi, I want to ask you now this question. What changed? What changed? I mean, yes, what changed? If if the parties had met and agreed, yes, it's necessary to change this. The draft bill went to Council of State, approved. It went to Parliament. Parliament looked at it, sent it to its subsidiary committee. They looked at it, they considered it, they passed it for public hearing. The public hearing, IPAC and others all joined in. You know, we've gone through all these processes. It's a long, tortuous debate. All the experts, all the leadership of the various parties, they were all there. And they all agreed. Indeed, they developed a consensus.
I heard some of the parliamentarians say that if they passed this bill as it was, it would disturb their campaign time, because then Parliament had to sit for 21 working days, you know, to enable the bill to become law. And they have only 3 months to an election.
Yeah, because that's what I keep saying. Is that an egg and chicken case? You understand which one comes first? I mean, you talk about election, you talk about transition. Well, how do we prioritize? What do we want? You understand? Election, we can have so many elections. We can have an election next year. We can have an election next 2 years, whatever. I mean, circumstances may lead him. Professor Mills, may so rest in peace, you know, halfway his tenure, you know, we had to have an election. So it is possible. But the transition, it has everything to do with the human beings involved. Treatment of human beings. That's why you know that people have the tendency to do the things which they want to do if they are not so regulated. You understand? So there are rules and regulations which are set up, including time constraints. You know, if you were to, for instance, to take out the time constraint for handing over, but for the Constitution, we said that after election, the outgoing president may hand over or shall hand over, and you don't have a time limit. I can assure you that somebody will hang in there after election for another 2 years, and that's going to create a crisis. You see,
but so isn't it legitimate for somebody who is going to contest elections, member of parliament, and he says, "Look, we have 3 months to go. If I approve this process, you know, this bill, whatever, I'll have to spend 21 days out of the 3 months in Parliament, when I should be in the field." Is that not a legitimate concern?
Well, it's your concern. You see, that is his individual MP's concern, and I sympathize with him. But we are talking about the larger, you know, concern about, you know, space enough for transition, you know, so that we can have our peace in this country, so that we can move more methodically, you know, move ahead. It's not an idle issue at all. The question of space for transition is absolutely not an idle issue. You see, you come out from the second round, from the bush, then they're asking you for documents and all that. 4 days, handover. You know, do you have regulations about how long, what do you call it, a minister should stay in a bungalow? Some of my colleagues were seen carrying their suitcases after, you know, after we lost it in 2000, you know. It was part of all these challenges, which actually challenged some of us, Professor Kwame or myself and others, to say that let us look at this issue. You know, we wrote various articles, we spoke in various platforms to say, no, we can't continue this way. The Ghana Political Party platform, as I said, actually initiated the first major steps to get what we are doing today, we had yesterday on. Just that the time was all factored in at the time. You get me? So yesterday's constitutional amendment is actually part of that process of ensuring that, you know, we have a smooth and orderly transition.
Well, viewers, we are watching Hot Issues, and as I said, it's a privilege to have Nana Ato Dadzie, former Chief of Staff, an international expert on transitions and a lawyer, with us in this conversation. Now, sir, how can anybody justify the fact that the Electoral Commission waited until the very last minute before putting in this bill?
Well, thanks, Kwesi. That is a question that legitimately the EC does but answer. But if I'm to speculate, I mean, I think that really, as I said, the events from 2012, after 2012 election, you know, would have pushed us or brought us into this situation. You know, we should all collectively accept responsibility, the parties and whatnot. Why? IPAC is an advisory body, as it were, to the EC. Where was IPAC when the EC was, you know, slowing down or not putting in the necessary, legislation or processes? That is not to say that IPAC should do EC's work for them. But, I mean, these are seasoned persons. They should take part of the blame. Where are the parties themselves? You know, when we spend time in court, we take the EC year, another year, and more. You know, it affects the whole process, you know. And I think that like the ECOWAS protocol on democracy and good governance says, you know, it said that we should establish trust and confidence in the EC in such a way that as an institution, you know, they will stand up and be able to work. But I'm afraid there's so much lack of trust and agitation around them, which really must be played down. You see, it's an institution, it's not an individual. And I think that we must, that I'm not afraid to mention this. You see, I think, for instance, for myself, I think the attack on the EC as a person is unfortunate and really must be played down. You understand? Let us look at what the institution itself is doing. Are they doing the right things? Are they not doing the right things? Can we, you know, avert their minds to it? It's not everything that must necessarily go to court. You understand? I say that the essence of a good transition, the essence of the key stability in the country is not necessarily a good constitution, but the consensual spirit. You know, what you were talking about, the statesmanship, that consensual spirit with which the people, the leadership decide to work. Time may be short for us to have election on the 7th of November. But if there is a will, you know, of the people, of Parliament, of the executive, of EC, that we must have it, because the stability of the country is more important towards the one-time election. If that had been there, this vote would have been different yesterday.
But it has been said that sometimes the EC does not listen. And one example, the EC came up with a new logo. And the impression, at least the impression that one got, was that all the political parties were not comfortable with the new logo. Many people from academia, from civil society and so on, said, look, what we need is not a new logo. The EC ignored all of this. Is that not a problem?
Oh, it is. It is obviously a problem. And EC, the organization, as I said, is there to serve the nation. I mean, the people. I mean, if all the parties come together and say, no, this one we are not comfortable with, I don't think the EC can ram it down the throat of the party, all the parties. I can see it. I mean, I'm sure that one somebody will be running to the court or the other. You see, but I think that it also underpins another factor which we tend to ignore, that the EC is made up of human beings. You understand? If you expect them to do the right thing, you must expect them occasionally to do the wrong thing. You understand? And then when they do the wrong thing, we try and endeavor to correct them. You get me? How can you know the saying? There is the guy who does nothing, who breaks no pot. You understand? We can all feel comfortable. So, but in the process of being active, some errors, and that for me is the ultimate goal, that we have a democracy. We as a people, Mr. Pratt, you sit here, I know how much you fought in this country, along with others, that you wanted democracy, plural democratic processes, plural media scene, plural everything. Everybody should have a right to speak and all that within limits. You understand? So what's going wrong? Now we have it. You get me? So, but to protect that democratic environment is the duty not of EC or EC alone, not of Parliament. Everybody, we all have an obligation. So for me, Parliament cannot on its own decide that maybe for partisan reasons we won't go along this path. For me, I think that it was unfortunate, the vote was unfortunate, but hey, it's the function of Parliament to pass law. You get me?
And they have decided
they've done it.
Not to pass law.
Well, of course, they're not to pass law. And that's what has happened.
Yeah.
And I can only, as a citizen, say that I think, it was unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Because we missed a historic opportunity of moving or deepening the democratic culture of, state governance.
Now, sir, the deed has been done.
Yes.
Are there any remedies? Is there something that we can do if we think that this was in error?
Well, as I said, the hub of the problem is with lack of consensus, consensus building, and within our political landscape. I've been elsewhere, where in the U.S. at the table, President Kufuor and all this, we were in a certain establishment where one Republican is here, the Democrat is here, we visitors were here, and if you hear the two of them talking, you would think that do they belong to different parties? Maybe at the time where the Ghanaian delegation or team, probably could see some were not comfortable with the presence of others. You understand? We have to build. It's a culture that we build. So for me,
are we not there yet? You now have a situation where husband is somehow NDC, son or daughter is fully NDC, and wife is NDP. We have reached there.
Yes.
Haven't we reached there?
Yes, we are. I know. I don't want to cite my own example. You'll be shocked. but the point I want to make is that by reason of blood or consanguinity, you are compelled. If your sister is MPP and you are NDC, there's no way you can use a knife to slice it. You will have to a relationship. But we are looking at the other situation where we may not be related by blood. And you are MPP and I'm NDC. And I may not...
somebody is CPP.
CPP,
and still we can talk together and work together.
Oh, well. But the interesting thing is that at the top level, I know that there's a lot of camaraderie among the leadership, but a lot of it is on the veneer, it's on the surface. What we need, to really answer the question, what we need is to have this deepened. If it's deepened, when there's a lot more of statesmanship, instead of brinksmanship, you understand? We can have even a short period and they're handing over. Like in the game of football, at a point in time, there's a whistle, you disagree with the referee, but you still walk off and say, well, that's it. Yes, you understand?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much
for coming.
Very much.
Well, viewers, we've been talking to Nana Ato Dadzie, former Chief of Staff, a lawyer, and an international expert on transitions. I do hope that all of us have learned a thing or two from this conversation. And as we always say, which is true, the best is on TV3.